WWE Universe, the D-Loop podcast is now a brand affiliate of WWE Shop with Fanatics. Get all of your latest merchandise from your favorite WWE superstars and wear them proud. So if it's CM Punk, the American Nightmare Cody Rhodes, L.A. Knight, the Tribal Chief Roman Reigns, or legends like The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and Bret the Hitman Hart, again, you can get all of your favorite merchandise over at wrestling.thedloopodcast.com. Again, that's wrestling.thedloopodcast.com to get all of your favorite merchandise at WWE Shop with Fanatics. This podcast is a Believe Network and Siete production. Welcome to another edition of the D-Loop podcast brought to you by Believe Network. I'm your host, Derrick T. Lewis. I hope the week is treating you great. Oh man, this past weekend I was a part of history at ECWA Super 8 tournament where the ECWA heavyweight champion, Mr. Darius Carter, not only did he defend the championship in each round of the tournament, but he became the only two-time winner in the history of the Super 8 tournament. That was the 28th annual tournament that took place, and it was the honor of mine to be the ring announcer, for the Super 8 tournament with ECWA. So huge shout out to every single wrestler on the card. For some of them that I didn't know, that I just met for the first time, it was really cool to network with you, and somewhere down the road our careers and lives will cross paths, I hope. But this episode is obviously, we're hip deep, in WrestleMania season. WrestleMania is fast approaching, April 6th and 7th at the Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia. And me and Gabi are going to do something different this week. We're actually going to give our top 10 favorite WrestleMania matches of all time. I'm serious, of all time. Let's not wait any longer. Celebrating 40 years of WrestleMania with Gabi starts right now. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the D-Loop podcast. She's always in the drive. I love her. She's in the driver's seat when it comes to professional wrestling. The one and only Gabi. Thank you for coming back. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. It 'tis the season for WrestleMania, and I can't believe, as we're recording this right now, we're about a good week and a half away from the granddaddy of them all, WrestleMania 40. Can you believe it? This is the 40th
insane.
WrestleMania. I mean, like I said, I remember where I saw WrestleMania number 1 in a theater, closed circuit TV, and now, here we are. 40 consecutive years later, first of all, it's 2 nights now.
Mm-hmm.
It's streaming. I mean, pay-per-view is pretty much obsolete at this point.
Mm-hmm.
It's on streaming services, Peacock, WWE Network if you're not in the United States. So, I mean, there's been so much history with this event. I mean, there's so many stories as we're recording this on Wednesday the 27th. It's 36 years ago today that WrestleMania 4 took place. And the Macho Man Randy Savage wrestled 4 times in the vacant WWF Championship Tournament to become the undisputed champion. He defeated in succession, Greg Valentine? No, was it the One Man Gang? Not the One Man Gang. My God, I'm trying to go off my memory right now. I think the first round was the Natural Butch Reed, Greg the Hammer Valentine, the One Man Gang, and the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase in the finals. I had to get my memory. I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, it was that chronological order. But and what was cool about that is that he had on 4 different robes that night.
And his robes were never basic, never generic. They were always elaborate.
And also Elizabeth had on 4 different dresses to go with his robe. I mean, Macho was so unique in how he looked, how he presented himself, which made him a larger-than-life WWE superstar that transcended wrestling. He was doing, obviously, the Slim Jim commercials, and he was in movies, etc., etc. So the one and only Macho Man always gets love on this show. But what me and Gabby are going to do for this episode as we celebrate 40 years of WrestleMania is that we're going to give you all our personal top 10 favorite matches, best matches, in our opinion, in the history of WrestleMania. And in addition to that, we can have two honorable mentions as well. I
Okay.
have my 10 and two honorable mentions, and Gabby has hers too. So I'm a gentleman. I always let the ladies go first. So, Gabby, without any further ado, what's your number 10?
So mine are in no order.
Okay.
But I think that it's hard to talk WrestleMania without mentioning the TLC match from number 17.
Okay. Okay.
I'm gonna
Got it.
start it off there. I mean, tables, ladders, and chair match. I think that that match rather set the tone for hardcore wrestling. You know what I mean? Like tables, ladders, and chairs. I think that it just one of those matches that again you can't talk WrestleMania without mentioning this match.
I agree. And I mean that one is in my I'm gonna actually do it in order from 10 on 1.
Okay.
I'm gonna do it. My number 10, and we're gonna talk about that match as well as we get
Mm-hmm.
to it. My number 10 is the 2023 D-Lou podcast match of the year. Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley from WrestleMania
So I
31.
have them, but I was gonna leave them to like towards the one-ish spot. Again, in no
Okay.
order, but I was
No
gonna
order, right.
I 100% have them on my list as well.
Okay.
You go. This is just you named it, you talk about it.
Okay, so initially we all
Mm-hmm.
thought that was going to be the main event.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the tag team championship match, you know, obviously had hierarchy, obviously, because of the bloodline storyline, Sami Zayn and everything else. So that's why that match ended up going on last on night one. And I will say that was, if I have to say, the greatest women's match in North American history. Because obviously in Japan, you know how they can go all day long. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
But in regards in North America, that has to be probably one of the greatest women's matches of all time.
Agree. From
I
start
mean,
to finish.
from A to Z, their
Mm-hmm.
entrances and just and I said it when I talked about when we were breaking down the end of year awards on the show. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, no, how could you top that? That night they went out to prove a point.
And did.
Like life really depended on it, and I just feel as though that, and when because when we all have these discussions about top 10 matches of all time or what's the greatest matches in WrestleMania, a lot of the women's matches unfortunately are not ever mentioned in that. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's mainly has nothing to do with the women themselves. It's
Mm-hmm.
basically how they were booked and how they were positioned for all these years. And I just think
Agreed.
that now, I would say maybe since 2015, 2016 was when I would say WrestleMania 32, because you figure WrestleMania 31 was that tag match with the Bella Twins against AJ Lee and Paige.
Uh-huh.
And that was kind of like the last WrestleMania that they were called Divas, because remember, um, they went behind the scenes and Triple H told the women, "You're no longer divas, you're WWE superstars." And
Mm-hmm.
that's when they were retiring the Divas Championship that night, and it was going to be the winner of that triple threat match with Charlotte, Sasha Banks, and Becky was
Mm-hmm.
going to be the WWE Women's Champion. And that was and they had Lita present the title. You know what I mean? Which was awesome that they were able to
Mm-hmm.
do that. But I said all that to say that the fact that, and I felt as though that match was one of the best on that card that whole entire weekend. That's why I gave it match of the year. So that's why I gave it my number 10. Now you go next.
All right. I think once again, it's hard to talk about WrestleMania without mentioning the WrestleMania GOAT himself, Shawn HBK. And I'm going to go back to WrestleMania 21 with Shawn versus Kurt Angle.
Mm, okay, talk about it.
I think Sean's going to be on my list a few times. So, guys,
Oh,
anyone who knows me knows I'm
yes,
HBK girl. So
yes,
he's on my
yes,
list
yes.
quite a few times because, again,
Same
Mr.
here, same here,
WrestleMania,
same here.
you
Yes.
cannot discuss anything regarding WrestleMania without including my boy Sean. Um, but I think him and Kurt Angle put on a great match.
Hmm.
They ran it back a few times. The chemistry was there. The storyline was there. I mean, you got sexy Kurt, the lovely song. Again,
I'm
I
gonna make
just
your ankle hurt, right?
we were able to see more of Kurt's personality, which I think is great as well, because I think that when he had the Kurt Angle Olympic gold medalist, that was his thing. Like we didn't get a chance to really see who Kurt was, that he is more entertaining as well. He has a personality. Like, yes, he can wrestle. He wrestled with a broke freaking neck. We understand that, but we got a
Right.
chance to kind of see like he can he can have some fun with. So yeah, I think that that match again is one of the ones that should be talked about when you're talking about WrestleMania and Mr. WrestleMania.
Now, I will say that that is not on my top 10, but I mean, and again, the match was awesome,
Hmm.
but my number 9 is going to be from WrestleMania 6, the Red and Yellow Man versus the Ultimate Warrior. And and I'll explain why, because
Hmm.
I was 11 years old when that match happened. Because to me, I think one thing I'll give the former owner of WWE credit for back then is that he knew how to position certain guys and insinuate all of their positives and hide their negatives. Now, as we got older, we realized, okay, the Warrior wasn't necessarily the greatest wrestler in the ring. Okay, we get that.
Hmm.
But you could not deny when that music hit and he ran down the aisle, the
Hmm.
fan, I went crazy on just watching him on TV, let alone, again, I never seen him live like that,
Hmm.
back then. But to see in a matter of, think about it, the Warrior was signed in 87 when he left World Class Championship Wrestling.
Hmm.
So summer of 87 till April 1st, 1990, that's how long it took him to get into the main event at WrestleMania with the biggest star in the company, the biggest star in the business.
Hmm.
He had something. And that was unprecedented that we had two baby faces in the main event of WrestleMania with both titles on the line. Obviously, the Red and Yellow Man was the WWF champion, and of course, the Ultimate Warrior was the Intercontinental champion. And fans, you had to make a choice on who you wanted to cheer for, and you couldn't see neither either one of those guys losing.
Hmm.
And if you look at the match, obviously Pat Patterson was the agent for that match, obviously,
Hmm.
and the match was great for what you were asking those two guys to do. They were not, listen, if you were looking for a 5-star match in the Tokyo Dome and all that, that wasn't happening. This was in the Sky Dome in Toronto.
Hmm.
67,678 fans at the Toronto Sky Dome. And like him or not, the Warrior, he literally became the man that night. And he was the first guy to pin Hogan clean in that era, which was huge,
Hmm.
huge at the time. That's why I was trying to think about, like, should I put this in my top 10? But it's like I had to, because you made your new star. Granted, he was a star, but he became the face of the company while the Red and Yellow Man went away for a few months to film a movie. So that's why I put that at the Red and Yellow Man versus Ultimate Warrior from WrestleMania 6 at number 9.
So I think that when people talk about older wrestling matches rather, and older wrestlers, I think you have to kind of meet the match where it is for the time.
But that's
You
exactly
know what
why
I
I did
mean?
what I did.
Like,
Right, right.
and I think that people forget that, and they're like, "Oh, blah 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 versus such and such for that." It's like, no, no, no. If
No,
you were there in, I'm making this up, 99, that match was great for 99. Is that
right.
match the same great on the same level as it is in 2024? Probably not.
Oh,
But again, you have to meet these matches for their time and for their error.
absolutely.
Um, so like for instance, on my list, I have Macho Man versus Ricky the Steamboat, and for number three.
Okay, number three.
That's
Okay.
on my list, right? Um, and again, it's one of those matches that you have to meet where it's at for that time. Like
Hmm.
Macho Man versus Steamboat. Like, let's take it back to Mania 3 in that era. Like those two competitors meeting at WrestleMania and how great that match was. Yes, it didn't have the flippy dippies and all of the things that you can have now, but again, meet that match where it's at. It's a great match from bell to bell.
Hmm.
And again, I think that people always, when you talk WrestleMania, they always talk about their era that they're in or that they remember wrestling. It's like, no, let's
Right.
dig a little back further. Like, I wasn't watching wrestling for WrestleMania 3. However, because I'm a fan of wrestling, I've gone back and I've watched these older matches. Me and my brother, whenever he's in town, he doesn't watch today's stuff as much. He comes to town, he wants to pull up WrestleMania
The
1
old
and
stuff.
2. He wants to pull up Halloween Havoc from 97. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he wants to watch those matches. And that's when I kind of was like, you know what? Yeah, there are some great matches. We don't always need a super kick party. You know what
Right.
I
And
mean?
right.
You
And
don't
that
always need.
match. Right. And believe it or not, that match that you just mentioned, Savage Steamboat, is on
Hmm.
my. It was on my number 6, and I'll get to that.
Hmm.
Having seen the match and the story as it built,
Hmm.
what happened was, if you look back at it, the match and the storyline didn't make sense because in the storyline, the Macho Man injured Ricky Steamboat's larynx. I'm
Hmm.
quote unquote his larynx
Air
because
quotes.
he, yeah, because what happened is that he Macho Man took the ringside bell and
Hmm.
did the elbow drop on his throat, and Steamboat was selling the crap out of it. He
Hmm.
even had to go to a speech therapist. They were just
Right. To
doing
get
this whole deal. But then when they get to WrestleMania 3, they're just like, it was just all these so many near falls in the match, and it was just like they just put on a wrestling clinic for 1987.
hmm
Like I mean, but there was no brawling because I mean, for a match that personal, I was expecting, even at 8, 9 years old at the time, I was expecting them to be brawling, not wrestle the way that they did.
hmm
And what's crazy is that people, granted, the main event that night obviously was Red and Yellow versus Andre the Giant. We get
Of
that.
course. Right.
And the 93,173 fans that were in the Silverdome that night in Pontiac, Michigan,
Where
which is
I'm from. Shout out to Pontiac.
yeah, Pontiac, Michigan, home of Gabi. I miss the Silverdome. I wish they didn't ever tore that thing down. By the way,
Uh,
I had a little tear in my eye when I saw the demolition of the stadium. I wish that somebody could have bought it and could have like preserved it. I wish
they did
WWE.
buy it and someone bought it and they just let it go, unfortunately. They bought it for next to nothing too. So
Right.
I'm sorry, fun fact here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
My grandfather was actually on the board of directors for the Pontiac Silverdome. And I know for a fact when that went up, I know he's turning in his grave right now. Like he was on the board of directors for that for many, many years. He was part of building it. He ran he's the director for it. Just it hurt me and my family's heart to see it go. But again,
If I
it's
was
just life.
WWE, I would have purchased the Silverdome, and I would have literally let that be a museum for
It was a freaking
WrestleMania
used car
3.
lot.
Basically,
Literally.
let it set up like
Hmm.
the ring apron and everything. You could charge fans to come in and just watch and just look at and set up the chairs and everything. Let that
Hmm.
be, like a museum almost for WrestleMania 3. That's what I would have done if I was you figure WWE could have afforded it, but I mean, hey,
Yeah, I mean, it's sold for like, I no exaggeration, like $500,000.
$500,000. I think a Canadian
Nothing.
family bought it or something like
Yeah, they
that.
bought it and they turned
Yeah.
it into like it was honestly a used Kia lot. So back, I believe it was Katrina or some other flooding. They shipped a bunch of cars and they were all literally, it was literally a used car lot. It's super unfortunate what happened to the Pontiac Silverdome. Again, shout out to Pontiac. I'm literally from Pontiac. I went to Pontiac High School. Yeah, but I agree with you 100%. It's heartbreaking what happened to that stadium.
Yeah, it's insane.
I mean, the Jacksons were there. Like I can name so many great things that happened at that stadium, and just now it's nothing.
Sucks. So I'm gonna move on to number 8 on my
Hmm.
list, and it is from WrestleMania 12, Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels in the 60-minute Iron Man match. And
Hmm.
I'm a wrestling purist, and people tell me, oh, that match is boring. Even my boy Conrad Thompson, shout out to the Podfather. Conrad Thompson, who's owner of Ad Free Shows. For he always listens to the show. Check him out. Subscribe. Do what you got to do. Go to the Patreon and all that jazz. Get all of the listings of different levels of membership if you want to get it. That's his free plug from me. But he actually finds that match boring. He said it on when they were covering WrestleMania 12, him and Bruce, and he was just like, I didn't want to really see the match until 5 minutes later. Until there was like 5 minutes left, because why am I going to sit there and watch a bunch of like near falls happen? But I'm just like, that's the beauty of it. But
Hmm.
you finally got to see, and this is just my opinion, why from 1990, I would say 1991 to
Hmm.
1997, why Bret Hart was the absolute best professional wrestler in the world.
Hmm.
Because he literally brought the absolute best out of everybody. Think about how many great matches he's had in that 5 to 6 year run.
I mean, he's on my list 3 times.
Right.
I
That's what
have
I'm
three Bret
saying.
Hart matches.
Yeah. And I'm
Hmm.
just saying, like, if you think about 91, obviously SummerSlam 91 against Mr. Perfect. Then you
Hmm.
have his match against you, then you have the British Bulldog from SummerSlam 92, that
Hmm.
match. The King of the Ring in 93 when he wrestled 3 times that night.
Hmm.
94, the match, his opening match against Owen Hart. You know what I'm saying? I
Hmm.
mean, you literally say that he always was in the conversation of having a match of the year candidate because of just how good he was. And I thought he brought the best out of Shawn Michaels that night. Like, I
I
just
think
thought,
mhm.
yeah.
I think that Bret Hart would be wrestling today if he could, if he didn't have that injury.
Oh, 100%.
I think that Bret
100%.
Hart's career ended, I hate to say tragically short because he didn't pass away, but like it ended very short. And I genuinely in my heart believe that had he not got injured, he would literally be wrestling today.
And mind you, he had been wrestling for 23 years at that point.
Hmm. Yeah, he's from the dungeon.
Yeah, but that match, the story building up to it, obviously, again, two baby faces, but just the training montage. Obviously, they had Shawn Michaels doing all of these flips and stuff in the ring, training with Jose Lothario, and then you had Bret Hart running the icy grounds in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. You had him swimming in the pool. You had Stu in the dungeon. Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm doing a stretch. Yeah, I'm a stretch in the dungeon. Yeah. I mean, he's like stretching Brett. You know what I'm talking about? So just building up to that, like the grizzled veteran against this young hotshot kid, Shawn Michaels. And their WWF careers were parallel. The tag team, obviously the mid card, the intercontinental. You know what I mean? And now these two forces are coming to a head, and I honestly thought Bret Hart was going to retain the title that night. And then, of course, Gorilla Monsoon said there must be a winner. Sudden death, super kick. Shawn Michaels wins 1, 2, 3. I was actually pissed off that Shawn Michaels won that night. I was actually pissed. I was really, really mad. But just if you just watch that match, it was the way it was framed. It was just incredible to just see how much. And I love technical wrestling. I love technical
Hmm.
wrestling. And I just appreciated the fact that even in that era, in the cartoon era of WWF, that they were able to put on a match like that.
Hmm.
And you go next.
All right. So I think once again, I mean, speaking of Bret Hart, he's up next. I have Bret Hart versus Roddy Piper.
You know,
Like
that's in
it's
my
just
honor. That's in one of mine. You'll find out a little bit, but yeah,
okay.
that match, surprisingly, because everyone thought that Roddy Piper it was just going to be a typical Roddy match, the
Hmm.
brawling and all that sort of stuff. That was the best match on the card of WrestleMania 8.
Hmm. I
You
mean, the interview, the match, the
Yeah,
build up, the finish. You know what I mean? Like there are so many elements in that match that again, like you made the comment, like everyone thought it was going to be a typical Roddy match, and just again, just Bret Hart could have a. No, I'm not saying that Roddy's a bad wrestler, but literally Bret Hart could have a match with the Stanley Cup and it would be five
yeah,
stars. You know what I mean? Like it just goes to show that time as well, because again, they didn't have all of the fancies. They literally had technical wrestling. It was
right.
Bret Hart and Roddy Piper. Um, the interviews leading up to it, where it got a little too personal for Bret, and Bret was like, "We're done. I'm
Yeah,
gonna beat you. You know what I mean? Like we're not doing this. You have the belt. I want it. Thank you. Let's go wrestle." I mean, just classic wrestling again for that time. And
Yeah, I
again,
mean,
I think
yeah.
it's very hard to discuss WrestleMania without, your Shawn Michaels and your Bret Harts.
I mean, they also got some color in that match too.
Mm-hmm.
They got a little juice, and it was crazy how it happened, and it just added to the drama of the match. And that finish is I love that finish of the match where Piper had the sleeper on him, and Bret Hart kicked off of the top rope of the corner and just put all his weight on Piper to pin him. And
Mm-hmm.
that's one thing I loved about Bret Hart matches. You never know how he was going to win each match.
Mm-hmm.
On TV, yes, he's doing a sharpshooter. He's doing a sharpshooter on the TV matches.
Mm-hmm.
But on pay-per-view back then, he could beat you with an inside cradle. He could beat you with an Oklahoma roll.
Mm-hmm.
He could beat you with a schoolboy. He could do everything.
You name it.
Everything. He can literally. That's how. And I loved watching him on pay per view because you just never knew
What he was going to pull out
what
his
the
bag of
finishes is going
tricks.
to. Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So that's why I really love that match. That's not it's not a bad. It wasn't a bad match at all. Like I said, the best match on the card at WrestleMania 8. My number 7 is from WrestleMania 30. Daniel Bryan versus Randy Orton versus Batista.
All right. I
And
have it on my honorables. Talk about it. Let's
mhm,
go.
and I think when you think about Daniel Bryan's come up, right?
Mm-hmm.
You think about his first WrestleMania was WrestleMania. Now, granted, he was on a dark match at WrestleMania 27, but
Mm-hmm.
mind you, he was in the opening card at 28, and the match was 12 seconds and he lost.
Mm-hmm.
The following year, he's in the tag match with Kane against Dolph Ziggler and Big E Langston. And, he got screwed out of the WWE title when he won it from Cena at SummerSlam. Triple H turns on him and, all that. And now they're talking about he's this B plus player. Then, of course, originally Daniel Bryan was supposed to wrestle Sheamus at WrestleMania 30.
Mm-hmm.
Punk was supposed to wrestle Triple H, and Batista was supposed to wrestle Randy Orton for the title. But because Punk left, and that just kind of left everything. And
Left a
honestly,
void. Mm-hmm.
yeah. And of course, the Yes Movement started.
Mm-hmm.
The Yes Movement started,
The
and
infamous yes movement.
oh my god! And it was just you just felt this energy that was coming from the fans. And the Yes Movement had transcended wrestling because you
Mm-hmm.
had Michigan State. It was a game, it was a basketball game, and the whole guy, yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes, yeah. You know what I mean? All these different sports was doing it, doing the Yes, doing the D-Bry. They made a song about it, do the
Mm-hmm.
D-Bry. You know what I mean? So it was just all of this buildup. And then, of course, Daniel Bryan had to wrestle Triple H in the first match of WrestleMania 30, in which he did win. He got beat down. And then, of course, he's injured. He comes out, and I mean, just the way he won it, he made Batista tap out, and that crowd became unglued at the Superdome.
Absolutely.
And it was just like, I can never ever get that image out of my head when he was on the announcer's table and you saw the WrestleMania 30 logo behind him and the pyro's going off and he's doing the yes. And I'm just like, oh my God, so emotional. And you think for a guy that's 5'8, 5'9, 195 pounds,
Not their typical wrestler body.
not the typical WWE, the prototypical wrestler that they
Mm-hmm.
used to look for, he was able to overcome that perception, and the fans fell in love with him. And it was truly one of the best WrestleMania moments of all time.
I think that we should have a discussion, not obviously today, but soon about like wrestling arenas and wrestling
Mm.
stadiums. You know what I mean? Because again, I think that the Superdome is just one of those places where it's like it's a great place for wrestling. Like it just the way you can set that place up, like in I don't know.
Well,
It's
here's some
I just think
history.
there are certain places that
Well, here's
just
some history for you. Mid South Wrestling, which turned into UWF, that was owned by Cowboy Bill Watts,
Mm-hmm.
used to do their big shows every year at the
Oh, that's
Superdome.
right. Mm-hmm.
So like back when the Junkyard Dog was there and Ted DiBiase and
Mm-hmm.
Butch Reed and Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Dr. Death Steve Williams, Ernie the Big Hat Ernie, they all had those big events at the Superdome. As
Mm-hmm.
a matter of fact, the Clash of the Champions during the Steamboat Flair trilogy, I believe it was Flair Steamboat 2, Clash of the Champions, because they went head to head against WrestleMania 5.
Mm-hmm.
That also took place at the Superdome.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been a lot of historical events that took place at that stadium.
Absolutely.
That's something
You're up.
that'll be on our list. We got to talk about
Mm-hmm.
the best stadiums for wrestling that we've seen on TV or we've experienced live. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. All right. So what number are we at?
I just finished number 7, so we're at number 6 now.
All right. So once again, we're bringing back Mr. WrestleMania. Let's talk about Mr. WrestleMania HBK versus Razor Ramon, WrestleMania 10.
Okay. I'm with it. Okay.
I,
I
I
Yeah.
go. No.
I mean, I would have to say that match. And again, I'm biased
Mm-hmm.
towards Brett. I thought if you wanted to talk about wrestling match, him and Owen completely stole the show. They were the opening match of WrestleMania.
So they're on my list too. We'll get there in a minute.
But right, but I think and again, both stories were great between
Absolutely.
Brett and Owen, and then of course the controversy of the IC title being two champions. Well, Shawn never lost him when he got suspended,
Mm-hmm.
and then Razor won the tournament,
Won
the
the
battle royal,
tournament.
and all that in '93, and now you got them coming to a head, and now whoever can grab both belts can is going to walk out with the title. The move of the match was when Shawn did that splash off the top of the ladder. I'm like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I said they're
Sean
going
came to fight. Sean came to go that night. Like,
absolutely,
wasn't
absolutely.
Vince on commentary that night as well?
Vince did. I think the very first WrestleMania that Vince was actually on color commentary, I
Mm-hmm.
believe, was WrestleMania 2 because they were in different venues for that particular
Mm-hmm.
WrestleMania, but I'm talking about on a consistent basis.
Mm-hmm.
His first WrestleMania that he actually was on commentary was WrestleMania 10.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm pretty sure Vince was on color that night too, which is also another layer because again, he doesn't normally do those things. But yeah, just a great match. I think it's probably one of the greatest matches in
Yeah,
WrestleMania history. Again, the build up for it with Shawn never really losing his title,
right.
Razor winning it, winner racing it. I'm sorry, Razor winning it in a tournament like ours there. Um, I think it's just one of those classic matches where once again Shawn was, I don't want to say he was in his prime then, but he was hot and ready to go. Um,
Yeah,
I think it's one of the greatest matches that Shawn and Razor have had. We all know the history there between them. But again, I really like that match. I actually did a mini breakdown of that matches on my TikTok. You can guys go find it there on my Instagram at Hi Gabby. It's one of my favorite matches that again I did a whole like 2 minute video on breaking it down.
awesome,
Um,
awesome.
yeah.
You have to go to her at HIIGABII. Check her out on Instagram. You can actually go and check out that review. This episode of the D-Lou podcast is brought to you by Goalie Nutrition. As someone who's used Goalie for quite some time, I can tell you that they're not only very good, but they're very beneficial. My favorite are the Super Green Gummies. The Super Green Gummies are uniquely crafted with a spectrum of essential nutrients such as vitamins A, B12, folic acid, and thiamine. It supports a healthy liver function, healthy nervous and immune system, digestive health, a boost to your metabolism, and overall health and well-being. There are no artificial sweeteners, flavors, or colors from artificial sources. They're vegan-friendly, gluten-free, and gelatin-free. All loyal listeners of the D-Lou podcast get a special 10% discount at checkout. Go to goalie.com, use promo code DLEW. That's goalie.com, use promo code DLEW. Now, my number 6 match again was Savage Steamboat. So we've already talked
Hmm.
about that match already. But like I said, having seen that match when it happened, you know, hey, listen, it was for the Intercontinental Championship. Macho Man had been champion, I think, a year and a month. So
Hmm.
he had a nice lengthy run as the champion, and it was weird seeing him lose it. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And obviously Ricky Steamboat walking out of there with the title, but storyline wise, the right guy won, and that was the goal. That was definitely the goal. We're gonna move on to number 5 right now.
All right, we're ranking the top five. Let's go. All right, I have Stone Cold versus The Rock from number 17.
Okay, all right, and that's on my list as well. Let's talk about that one. So, what was it about that one in particular that? Because obviously they had their own WrestleMania trilogy.
Yeah, they
You
had a
know what I
trilogy.
mean?
Hmm.
What made this one special than the other two?
Oh, it's a hard one. Um, I think that this was back when I don't want to say yeah, Prime Rocky because Prime is so. Uh, I would say this is one of the versions of the Rocks that I enjoyed. I'll put it that
Yeah,
way. I think that it was I think it's the best match in their trilogy. Um, and again, another one of those wrestlers who had they not got in, and I hate it sounds weird because Stone Cold wrestled last year, and like we all thought that Stone Cold was gonna get up there, and I'm not last year, but we all thought that Stone Cold was going to like hit KO with a stunner and that'd be the match, and they had a match. But again, I
yeah,
do think that if Stone Cold had not gotten injured, he another wrestler who would still be wrestling today. And again, I think this was like Prime Rock, where he had like the Ray-Bans on, the gold chain, the Versace shirt. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
kind of the version that we're seeing now, but where we saw it when it was like live.
Agreed. Yeah,
The Rock is one of my favorites for many reasons, and I think one of the reasons why I loved him is that I love his personality. I love the arrogance. Um, Yeah, I think that it was also, I mean, you pretty much had the two faces of the company going against each other. How
yeah,
often do you see the two faces going up against each other where you know what I mean? Where it's hard to kind of figure out, all right, who's really my heel, who's really my face? Where
right.
normally it's pretty clear who's playing what. As much as they like to say we don't necessarily always put face versus heel, they do. Um, yeah, what are your thoughts on this match? You said you had it on yours as well.
It's on my list, and I got to tell you that this was when The Rock was really, whew, it was like
Hmm.
you couldn't touch him.
Hmm.
He was everywhere. I mean, basically year 2000, because obviously Austin was gone most of the year 2000 because of his surgery. The Rock was basically the man and the face of wrestling at that point.
Hmm.
And he was, I mean, literally, he did a song with Wyclef Jean called "It Doesn't Matter." He was, I mean, he was everywhere.
Hmm.
Let me tell you something. In the year 2000, this is very true. I was turning 22 that year. 21 and a half-year-old Derrick had my hair, the curly and all that. I had the sideburns. I'm telling you, I literally was like, Dwayne was my guy. He
Hmm.
really was. And I had the shade. My nephew was just talking to me about this a couple weeks ago. He said, "Hey, Uncle Derrick, I remember you used to have the sideburns." Like I'm like, "Yeah, I did."
Hmm.
Like I love the Rock, man. It like everybody wanted a piece of the Rock. You know what I
You
mean? No
had to.
matter what. And he was just so entertaining, but everyone forgets. Damn good wrestler, a damn good worker. And if you think about it, he said this in an interview a few years ago. His work in the ring is similar to Scott Hall.
Hmm.
Very smooth. And I would put Randy Orton in there too. Just flawless in the ring. They could just work magic and they could just do it all in there. I really enjoyed that match. And obviously the heel, I had a feeling. I told the kid this right before I went home that night to watch WrestleMania 17. As I have a feeling Austin's gonna turn heel and go with Vince McMahon.
Hmm.
I just had a I don't know. I said
Sometimes you just
because
know.
I said because for Austin to win the title back, it's like, okay, where do you go from
Where
here?
this is going. Hmm.
It would have just been very. Now, granted, they were in Texas, they were in Houston at the Astrodome, so that crowd was very pro Austin. So he could have lost, and they would have cheered anyway. But the point is that I just had a feeling something was going to happen, and it did. And he ended up going with Vince McMahon, and I mean, Jim Ross had a lot of the night. He said, Why did he go out with Satan himself? Why, Austin? Why, damn it?
Hmm.
I mean, man, like just you can't script that. That's
No, you can't.
you can't script
And
that can't be scripted.
no.
Well, my number five is the same guy, The
Hmm.
Rock, versus the Red and Yellow Man from WrestleMania 18.
Ah, he's on my list too. All right. Talk about it.
And first of all, again, it was the perfect building, Sky Dome,
Hmm.
and to me, that was a prime example of a crowd making the match. And again, this is all about what we're going to do in a few weeks when we talk about arenas and venues and wrestling and how it can really, really set the tone for an event, a match, or whatever the case may be. I truly believe those fans at Skydome, and I actually know a few people that were there that night.
Hmm.
If you turn that, if you watch that match with the volume down, which I've done,
Hmm.
the match is kind of meh, okay. But oh boy, when you turn that volume up and when you see the interaction, how basically that crowd turned Rocky heel. And The Rock was smart enough to realize, okay, I'm gonna have to go with this. And they did that in the middle of the match. Like there was really no, some people get freaked out. Sometimes you just gotta go with it. And when Red and Yellow kicked out of the rock bottom and he started, walking up and all this other stuff, that crowd, man, that I mean, I could still remember being on the edge of my bed watching that match, so anxious, like, oh my God, is he gonna beat him? And the call by Jim Ross when he did the leg drop and he said he beat Andre the Giant with this same move. I'm just like, oh man, that was one of the greatest calls. Just just talking about history, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And just it was like everyone played their part in that match. The crowd, commentary, and the wrestlers that were in the ring, even the referee who stood out of the frame when they went face to face and just let the crowd just eat it up.
Hmm.
They just
So
stood there.
Bully Ray actually mentioned doing that, and I've done it a few times, going back and watching the matches silent and
Mm-hmm.
seeing the difference between the event and the crowd and seeing the difference between the two. And I've gone back and done it in a few matches. I have not done it for this match, but now I'm kind of curious. So I'll be doing that tonight. I'll text you later. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's just one of those ones where the crowd truly can make or break a match and make or break the setting. If the crowd ain't
100%.
in it, it doesn't matter how good the match is,
Oh yeah.
it's not going to go anywhere. But if the crowd is in it, no matter how, and I'm not saying this is a bad match, no matter how bad the match is, it's golden. It's crowd matters,
I mean,
which is
hell.
why, yeah, I mean, it, it's an important factor and it should point into a test how hard it was for wrestling when we had the pandemic era, but not
Oh
here nor
yeah.
there, here nor there. But yes,
Right.
I also have that match on my list as well.
Well, I mean, I put you this way. I was a part of a crowd when we absolutely shit on a match.
Hmm.
I was in a crowd at a WrestleMania where we collectively shit on the match. And I guarantee you, I know that you know which one I'm talking about.
I got a feeling. I got a feeling.
Take a guess.
You said you were there.
I was there.
Okay. Uh, how many years ago?
20.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got nothing for you then. Which match?
Brock and Goldberg.
I somehow feel like I knew it was going to be Goldberg, but I didn't know which match. Because I mean,
Yeah,
it's Goldberg, man. You can pick one at that point.
I just
I'm
saw
not
that
a
match recently,
full
and
disclosure. I'm not a Goldberg girl.
yeah,
Never have been.
after his recent comments, he's about to start.
Not even before then. I just never. I even in
Well,
WCW. You know, I love
yeah,
WCW. I've just personally never been a Goldberg girl. So
yeah.
I'm not surprised. And like you said, his recent comments were just not okay. And
Nah, he's about to get that red and yellow treatment where I'm just
he's
not
gonna
gonna.
tank his legacy, right? Where it's like
Yeah,
that's unfortunate.
I'm just gonna call him the ball tattoo guy,
Yep.
the
I
ball, the
agree.
ball goatee tattoo guy with the black trunks. That's what I'm gonna call him. But
And you
yeah,
know
so
who we're
that was
talking
my
about.
right, and that was my number five, and now we're on number four.
All right, I think that it's time that we visit Bret Hart versus Owen in WrestleMania 10.
Okay.
I
All
think it's
right.
time we go there.
Yeah.
I think this is obviously brother versus brother. There's obviously a lot of history there because they are actually brothers. Everyone knows that.
Yeah.
The Hart boys come out of the Hart dungeon. I think this is a match that no one thought that Owen would get the pin.
Yeah.
This
It's
is a
gonna
match
be,
where
yeah.
everyone assumed that Big Brother Brett was going to come and just handle little brother, and it's not how that match went. Um, I think that I mean, obviously, he tried to put him in that sharpshooter. Owen got out of it. Um, Owen blocked, was it a roll? Blocked a roll and beat them and won the match. Pinned Owen.
Oh, it
I'm
was the
sorry,
big, oh,
pinned Brett. The victory roll.
victory roll,
Yeah.
victory roll.
Brett tried to end the match with the victory roll. Owen said, not it, not today. And pinned Brett to win. So again, I don't think this is I think that everyone thought this was going to be kind of like a match where, all right, big brother is going to handle little brother and that's it. And Owen said, not today, not tonight.
Yeah, and
And
this
again,
story,
another one of those venues, right? Madison Square Garden.
yeah, WrestleMania 10. And
Hmm.
that was March 20th, 1994. We just celebrated that. I can't believe
Hmm.
it's 20 years, man. It's insane. I put up a story on Twitter last week, and I was just saying I remember where I was. I had a parade in my hometown in Newark, New Jersey, with a Spirit of Newark Drum and Bugle Corps. We had the St. Patrick's Day parade that day,
Hmm.
and this is when WrestleMania used to start at 4 p.m. And my mom literally met me back at our practice facility to pick me up after the parade was over, and they bust us back so we
Hmm.
can get home in time to watch WrestleMania 10.
Got to be home in time.
Oh yeah, there was really there was no negotiation. Like I had to get the hell out of there, and I did. But the story started with Brett and Owen. They were planting seeds. You know, it started at Survivor Series '93, where Owen was the only Hart brother to get pinned in the
Hmm.
elimination match because Brett like ran into him, and no, he ran into Brett by accident, and Shawn pinned him, and that's when they were starting, the bickering and the this and the that, and then they passed it up over the holidays. Then they teamed up at the Royal Rumble in '94 to face the Quebecers for the tag titles. Brett injured his knee and couldn't continue, and Owen just kicked, as he said in the interview, kicked his leg out of his leg, and and Brett ended up, winning the Royal Rumble that night with Lex Luger. They end up, co-winners because Brett not only had to wrestle Owen, but he had to wrestle because he had the coin toss,
Uh-huh.
and he was going to wrestle Owen in the first match, and then he was going to wrestle the winner of the Lex Yoko match and in the main event that night. And I'm thinking, oh, Brett's going to just win this and get ready for a nice championship match. Oh, no, no, no. No, Owen won it. But Brett, in his book, he talked about, and I have his book here actually, I do,
Hmm.
and he talked about how the night before WrestleMania, he called Owen and said, we gotta redo this match
Hmm.
because the way it was designed, the crowd was going to cheer Owen because of the
Yeah.
fact that A, they were in New York, and B, it was just going to be a straight up technical match. And Brett wanted to point out, like, listen, you're the heel. You're going to have to do some underhanded shit in this match in order for this to work. And they did, and he did. Owen did some dirty things in the match, break the eyes or whatever, and yeah, that's how he was able to do it. And it worked out beautifully. And then of course, Brett winning the championship that night, and then you saw Owen creep into the ring while
Hmm.
everyone's celebrating with Brett, and you could kind of see read his lips saying it should have been me, it should have been
Hmm.
me, and let you know that feud was far from over. And Owen had a one hell of a 1994. He won the King of the Ring. He main evented SummerSlam against Brett in the steel cage.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So
Very
like,
important part of his career.
oh yeah. So I mean, and I'm pretty sure Brett had no problems putting over his little brother,
None.
Owen Hart, for that. Incredible. But my number 4 is TLC 2 from WrestleMania 17. And we talked about that earlier
Hmm.
in regards to, but that was truly the culmination of that trilogy because they
Hmm.
had the triangle ladder match at WrestleMania 2000, TLC 1 at SummerSlam 2000, and then of course TLC 2 at WrestleMania 17. And I mean, it's the two spots in the match that people still talked about today, and that was the Edge spearing Jeff while Jeff was hanging from the ring from the
Dangling. Yep.
dangling, and Edge speared him from the top of the ladder. And then, of course, the big spot where Bubba and Matt Hardy got tipped over off the ladder onto like the stacked tables outside of the ring. But the cool thing was is that it featured 3 stars in that match too. Rhino for Edge and Christian, um, Spike Dudley for the Dudley Boys, and of course
Hmm.
Lita, who was with the Hardy Boys, and they did their spots in the ring. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So they were able to get featured, and of course Edge and Christian went. And mind you, Edge and Christian won all 3 of those matches, by the way. But you walk away with like when you talk about those matches, you really don't talk about who won the match.
Hmm.
Because you and I are loyal listeners to Busted Open Radio. Shout out to
Hmm.
Dave LaGreca and the crew. But one thing that Bully always talks about is it's not about going over; it's all about getting over. And
Everybody got
to
over that night.
this, and if I'm pretty sure every signing that they do throughout the Comic Cons, the Wrestle Cons, the big event, all these different the WrestleCade, the list goes on and on. I'm pretty sure they run into a lot of people that bring up the TLC matches
Hmm.
because those are
Have to.
truly the highlights of their careers. I mean, they were young, and think about it. If you took Rocky and Austin off that card, TLC 2 could have closed WrestleMania 17.
Yeah, easily.
Like that, and that's why I always say, and a lot of people say that WrestleMania 17 is probably the greatest WrestleMania of all time because you had everybody in their prime.
Hmm.
And everybody had a situation. Everybody had a storyline. Everybody had something going on. You had a stacked roster. Mind you, they had just bought WCW, so I mean, we can't include all the WCW. Granted, you had a few WCW guys that were on that card that prior to them being bought. Obviously, Chris Jericho, the guy that I'm never ever going to mention on a show again because he did some horrible things to his wife and kid.
Hmm.
Um, the Big Show, I mean, he was from WCW. Um, I believe was it Perry? No, Dean Malenko, Eddie Guerrero. I forget who it was on that card. I think it may have been Dean Malenko and those guys, or maybe Eddie Guerrero that may have been on that card too. I think for a European title match that was on the line. But still, you had a lot of talent in their prime on that card at WrestleMania 17. So, I mean, if you seriously, if Rocky and Austin, let's just say for some reason they had to take that match off, I truly believe that TLC 2 could have closed the show.
Easily. Without a
All
shadow
right.
of a doubt. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Now we're gonna hit up number 3. Number 3, Trace, you go.
Once again, I think that it's hard to talk about WrestleMania without talking about Undertaker.
Mhm.
So I picked Undertaker versus Triple H from number 17.
Wow, wow, wow. The street fight, man.
Hmm.
It was like, all right, you had Motorhead playing Hunter to the ring. You had Undertaker riding that bike, and I love that shot when they just were on the side and they just let him come down that ramp. I love that because when they did the WWE Sacrifice video vignette, when they
Hmm.
had My Sacrifice playing and they showed that shot of Taker coming down the ramp at WrestleMania 17. I love that video package. I love that. Dave Sahadi, huge shout out to him because he was the one putting all of those video packages together back then.
Hmm.
Dave Sahadi is the man. But it was everything because mind you, I don't know if you knew that match was a last minute thing. Vince had totally forgot that Taker and Triple H weren't even on the card.
Hmm.
They had nothing to do.
Right. How
Like
rare and odd
imagine,
is that? Yeah,
like
imagine.
think about now. I just said that was a stacked roster. Now
Hmm.
imagine your roster is so stacked that you forgot. Oh shit, Triple H and the Undertaker don't have a match.
Right. Like what are we doing?
Oh my god! And this is no over the hill Triple H or no over the hill Undertaker. No, these are
This is
guys in their
yeah.
prime.
Hmm.
Yeah, that
And
that they beat the living crap out of each other. My god.
easily. Hmm. Yeah, and like I said, if you have to pick a match, that's the match that I would pick for Undertaker. I do think Undertaker obviously had a streak and he had amazing matches. But I just think that him versus Triple H is one of those ones that's not talked about often enough.
Yeah, true. And what's crazy is that they really didn't start counting the streak until WrestleMania 18 when he did
I was
that
gonna say
Stones
when he,
went up the
yeah.
number and he
Hmm.
beat Ric Flair and he said 10-0 at WrestleMania. So
Yeah.
no one was really paying attention to the streak until Jerry Lawler it basically, said, "Oh, he's 10-0 at WrestleMania."
Hmm.
So that's how it started. So they have it. But my number three, and you mentioned it, obviously Austin Rock 2 from
Hmm.
WrestleMania 17. That's my number three. Like I said, the two biggest face, the two faces of the company. And hell of a match, total great story. They everything you can ever ask for out of a main event from your two top guys. That's all I
Hmm.
got on that. So let's move on to number two.
All right. Number two. All right, let's do it. Let's talk about Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker. Since we're talking about Taker, let's do Shawn and Taker from number
Which
25.
25.
25.
Okay, 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 okay. Yeah, that first of all, the entrances were incredible.
Yeah.
Right? The entrance,
Hmm.
let's start the entrances was incredible. And it's crazy to think that this was a different Shawn Michaels that Taker had last wrestled. Oh God, you figure they had you could tell they had something going because Royal Rumble 2007 they were the last two in there and that was wow incredible. And then they were the first two in the ring at Royal Rumble '08 at the Garden. I was there for that.
Hmm.
And I'm just like, oh, they're starting it off with this. Okay,
Hmm.
so they were planting seeds for 2 years that this encounter was going to happen,
Yeah.
and somebody kicking out
Explosion.
of the tombstone.
Never heard of.
Jim
Never heard of
Ross
it.
is his response. I'm having an out of body experience.
Jim Ross's one-liners.
I
Just
mean, you couldn't again. That's why I always say he is the greatest play-by-play man in the history of wrestling. He doesn't put himself, he always puts Gordon Solie ahead of him. Jim
hmm.
Ross is the man. And again, when we talk about the venue, the fans, commentary, the wrestlers, the referee, everyone doing their part, like you saw Shawn Michaels kick out of the tombstone, you're like, ooh.
What is happening? Come on now.
I'm like, man, unbelievable.
Hmm.
Unbelievable. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, I think the streak is about to be broken.
Everyone did.
You
Everyone did.
literally, and of course, Taker ends up catching him, got him with the tombstone that ended up pinning him. But I mean, you could tell that the crowd was worn out after that
Yeah.
because by the time the main event came along, Triple H and Randy Orton, the crowd was just flat.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, where do you go from that match? You know
Right.
what I mean? Like,
Same thing happened with Rock and Red and Yellow. Jericho and Triple H had to go on last.
hmm.
You know what I mean? And it was granted the crowd was still in it, but that you could just tell that the energy was just taken out of the crowd because it was so much emotion happening in the ring.
Hmm.
So many things that you didn't expect. Again, no one was ever thinking about Shawn Michaels kicking out of the tombstone. Nobody. Nobody. You know?
Hmm.
But my number two had a similar effect on a WrestleMania, of course. And I'm talking about WrestleMania 13,
Okay.
Bret Hart and Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Our matches go on. I love how our matches, whenever we do these, they always seem to link up. And I love that. We
Yeah.
have like one or two differences, but for the most part, me and you are always on the same page.
Yeah. Number two, Bret Hart and Stone Cold, because that was the first time that a double turn happened in a match at a WrestleMania. You know what I mean? And you're talking about Bret Hart was already having some heat because of the fact that some people was saying, "Oh, he's whining or he's crying or this, that, and the other" because he got screwed out of the Rumble, which he did.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And he won the Final Four Battle Royal thing at In Your House Final Four to win the title, only to lose to Sid the night the next night. Bret Hart was he was in a steel cage against Sid, and Undertaker slammed that door on his face. And Bret Hart had the meltdown of meltdowns
Yes.
when Vince asked him, he said, "I know you're frustrated," and he shoved him down. Frustrated, Frustrated isn't a goddamn word for it. This is bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, you can tell everybody in that goddamn dressing room that I'm the best there is, the
The
best there
best there
was,
was
and the
and the
best there ever
best
will
there'll ever
be.
be.
I mean, man, I was just like, because that was the first time they had let, a curse word,
Fly.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
fly on USA Network. And I think they had they let them know the heads up of what was going on. But man, now that's going into WrestleMania. And him and Steve Austin having a submission. It was a submission match.
Mm-hmm.
It's even a street fight. It was a submission match. And Ken Shamrock was the referee. And when Austin, I think he gave him a low blow. And when he started putting the boots to him, the mud hole in him and walking it dry, he did the middle finger. And that crowd, and mind you, that was in Chicago at the Rosemont. And talking about an arena again, making the match, making everything happen. And it was just Stone Cold became a superstar with Bret Hart.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And of course, he didn't give up. He just passed out to the sharpshooter because he was bleeding. And remember he
So
was
much
pushing
going
up.
on.
He was
Mm-hmm.
pushing up out of there, and the blood was.
Ugh.
It was just the
Yeah.
image, and they made it a shirt, blood of a stone.
Yeah.
You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like it was just so much thing. It was so
Iconic.
many things happening in that one match, and you turn one guy heel and another guy babyface. It was incredible,
Mm-hmm. Double turn.
and that's why I will definitely have that in my top three, hands down. You're number two.
So my number two, wow. I don't think that is a top 10 match. I know it's wow, we're talking about seven matches. I think that it needs to be talked about. I think that we need to talk about Sasha versus Bianca.
Okay.
Um, I think that, again, while I do not think it is one of the top 10 matches ever in life, I think that it was a great moment in WrestleMania history. Um,
Historic.
where
Historic for so many reasons.
we have our two black women main eventing WrestleMania.
And kudos to
Um,
Michael Cole for pointing that out on commentary. Yes.
100%. Um, again, I just think that one of those matches that we have to talk about, regardless. Um, again, just two black women. And I mean, you can see the beginning of the match. Bianca's crying, Sasha's crying, just
Mm-hmm.
the emotion and just taking in that moment. And then them finally locking up and having their match. But I love that moment for Sasha. And I love that moment for I'm sorry, I'm saying Mercedes, for Sasha and that moment for Bianca. Just chef's kiss.
Okay. Now, now I'm gonna go to number one,
Okay.
and we already talked about it already. Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker. That's my number one. And just for all the things that we talked about and mentioned and everything, but I just want to just talk about what that was my number one.
Hmm.
And but getting back to Sasha and Bianca, I mean, when she whipped that girl with her braid, ooh my God. And you
The
saw the
sound
welt.
it made, ooh, baby.
That was
Tell
a
me wrestling
shoot.
ain't real. Tell me wrestling ain't real.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. The welt was on her side. You saw it on her room. Like, man, she ate it. I mean, I'll give it to her.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that
So,
should hurt. I
yeah.
know that hurt.
So now you're number one.
So, um, my number one.
Mm-hmm.
My number one actually was Charlotte and Rhea. We
Rhea.
talked about
Yeah.
it previously.
Mm-hmm.
For the various reasons. Again, like we mentioned multiple times, I do feel like this should have main evented. I think this was a great match for both of these ladies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, from the entrances down to the finish, to the point where you have Charlotte, while Rhea is celebrating, you have Charlotte sitting outside of the ring and she's smiling.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, she lost the belt. But she's sitting outside the ring smiling because she was able to have an amazing match and put an amazing talent over, and an amazing talent got over. Because look at Rhea Ripley now.
Rhea is like she is when I got my girlfriend, because I took my girlfriend to shout out to the missus, I love you. I took her to Madison Square Garden for the holiday tour, December.
Hmm.
Got it for Christmas because she had never been to a wrestling match before.
Hmm.
And she was like, and she knows she was kind of knowing who Rhea Ripley was, the mommy thing, because my girl is Puerto
Hmm.
Rican. My girl is Puerto Rican, and she wanted the mommy's always on top shirt. And I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, not a problem, honey. I'll get that for you. She goes home. Her oldest daughter, who's on turning 20 this year, the first thing she said, "Mom, where you get that shirt from?" And she was like, "Where'd you get it from?" And she said, "Oh, Derek got it from." She was like, "Oh my god, I love Rhea Ripley." And it's like, and I'm just like, "Oh my god!" I'm like, she's a fan. So I'm like, all right now. And I was telling her last. I said, "Honey, I said I gotta get, now I gotta get her a
Right.
shirt.
Have
I gotta get
to.
her a Rhea shirt now." So, but I'm just saying, like Rhea Ripley is transcending beyond wrestling. She really
Hmm.
is, and like just the fact that she got to have probably the match of her career at that point with one of the best workers in the business, male or female. And kudos to Charlotte Flair for her rehab and how far along she is now.
Oh my gosh.
She'll be back. She'll be back
Yeah,
at SummerSlam, I believe, to reclaim her crown. I guarantee that. That's gonna happen. That's definitely gonna
she
happen.
has to. It
Yeah.
has to. I agree.
Now here are my two honorable mentions. One you mentioned, that's in your top 10, Bret Hart and Roddy Piper. And my second honorable mention is Kurt Angle versus Eddie Guerrero from WrestleMania 20.
Ooh.
Damn, and I was
Let's talk about that one because
that
that has not
match.
been on our match. That has not been on our list
Yeah,
yet. Let's talk about
let
it.
me tell you something. Just seeing Kurt Angle, mind you, because you figure by that time he had that surgery after WrestleMania 19, and he did, he healed up as best he could. I thought he came back too soon, as we know, but of course he ended up turning heel. And then now they're building a story with Eddie because Eddie had just won the title from Brock the previous month at No Way Out,
Hmm.
and just it was you saw a little bit of lucha because of Eddie, but it was technical wrestling throughout the whole entire match. A very very underrated match that some folks talk about. Some people that are in the know, they know, but the average fan, and they're probably not going to mention that match. But
Hmm.
seeing that match as it happened in Madison Square Garden live as a fan, I was just like, holy shit. Like it was unbelievable.
Hmm.
And Eddie, of course, doing the line cheating and stealing. He was taking off the boot, and Kurt Angle tried to grab. He had him in an ankle lock, and he yanked the boot, and it came off. And then out of the blue, Eddie Guerrero just did an inside cradle and pinned him and got out of the ring.
And Eddie.
Yeah, man. So it was just that. That's my honorable mention. What are yours?
So we actually discussed some of my honor matches and mixed in. Who did I have? Yeah, we talked about them. My honorable mentions were, sorry, I've lost where I am. We talked about my honorable mentions, so nothing more to add to that one, unfortunately. Sorry.
No worries, no worries. But like I said, we're celebrating 40 years of WrestleMania, and you know, Philadelphia is going to be electric next week for Mania Week. Obviously, next week's episode, Gabby and I are going to be talking about breaking down the entire card
Hmm.
of WrestleMania 40, both nights. We're going to talk about it, what our predictions are going to be, and what it means, going forward after that. Because we're going to talk about some things about, okay, what's going to happen after night two of WrestleMania? Are we going to have a new champion? Or is the tribal chief going to reign supreme? Will the final boss cost Cody? I mean, we don't know. We just don't know. So we're going to have a full discussion on WrestleMania 40 next episode, next week's episode. So get your engines ready because it's going to be a long, long ride. Before we get out of here, Gabby, give them your social media,
All
please.
right, you guys can find me at Hi Gabby, HiiGabii on Twitter as well as Instagram and on Facebook.
All right. Well, Gab, as always, again, you're the matriarch of this show, and I'm beyond. appreciative of everything that you bring, to the
We're coming on
show.
our 1 year friendship anniversary, man.
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, it was I literally was I had a 9 a.m. flight out of LAX, and I got to the airport around 6 in the morning after I dropped my Turo car off, and then they dropped me off at the airport. And I see this girl in line. I think she has some. I think I forgot what she had on, but you recognized me with my Mania hoodie on. You
Yep.
nodded and you said, "Hey, we got to talk."
Yep. We were
And
in line. We were in
we were
line
in line
buying waters or something,
buying
like
waters
some
at
sugar to keep
at
us
a
awake.
convenience
Yep.
store. At a convenience store. So, like I said, it really goes to show you what the world of wrestling really means to a lot of us, because I
Hmm.
didn't know, like,
Perfect
this time.
strangers.
Yeah, this time last year I didn't know Gabby. I
Perfect
literally I didn't know her.
strangers.
Perfect strangers,
Hmm.
and then all of a sudden, what's the old expression? A stranger is a friend you have is a friend you haven't met yet.
I was like, hey,
You know what I
we were
mean?
talking. I was like, yo, what are you were talking about your podcast, all these things? And I was like, yes, give me your socials. Followed you
Yeah,
immediately, and literally here we are a year
yeah,
now talking
absolutely, and
about next year's Mania. It's insane when you think
yeah,
about it, but it just hit me like this is our year friends
yeah,
anniversary.
absolutely, absolutely. Chef's kiss to that. Well,
Absolutely.
thank you very
Cheers.
much, Gab, and as always, we'll be talking next week.
Have a great one. See you guys later.
Well, that does it for this week's edition of the D-Loop podcast. Again, kudos to Gabby for stopping by once again as we celebrate, 40 years of WrestleMania. And like I said, next week's episode, we're going to be giving our predictions, going over the full card as we talked about, and we hope you definitely tune in. Speaking of which, if you haven't subscribed already, I definitely encourage you to do that. Subscribing on multiple platforms. I'm talking about iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Pandora, Deezer, you name it. And on Apple Podcasts, I definitely encourage you to leave a 5-star review and let the people know what you think of the D-Loop podcast. And during WrestleMania week, you can see yours truly at the world famous Monster Factory for We've Been Here. That's right. Thursday, a special day this time around, April 4th. A special bell time of 3 p.m. featuring all the stars of the world famous Monster Factory, but we're going to have some superstars coming through. We're going to be having Impact Wrestling / TNA superstar Steve Macklin, the one and only Shazza McKenzie, Lince Dorado, the Notorious 187 Homicide, and the list goes on and on. Tickets are on sale now at monsterfactory.org, and you do not want to miss out on this once-in-a-lifetime event. During WrestleMania week, of course. Now, my stores, okay? You can hit up my stores. My Pro Wrestling Tee store is pwt.derricktlewis.com, in addition to my own store with all my Siete music, merchandise, hoodies, tees, long sleeve tees, tote bags, coffee mugs at shop.derricktlewis.com. All my social media you can hit me up on at The Real DT Lew, with the exception of Facebook, which is Derrick T. Lewis official page. I have a single out, just saying. Espacion with Angie Stars is out on all streaming platforms. The music video was on Apple Music, Tidal, Vivo app, and YouTube. Well, I'm going to get out of here, and as I always say, no matter what it is you do in life, always remember to make it count. See you next time.